Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Raising Those Spirits podcast. I'm Steve,
I'm Sam.
and we have a quick update before you get into the first episode because things have not started off as planned.
That's right. After weeks and weeks of planning this show out, we were going to use the name Raising Spirits podcast.
I was going to say,
I was
which
going to say
we researched and totally wasn't taken
it
before we
was not.
recorded the first few episodes.
That's right. It was not. It was an available podcast name. We sat down on the social media for Raising Spirits podcast, and the other night Steve was doing some googling, and what'd you find, Steve?
I find that they are 4 episodes into the Raising Spirits podcast that was created well after we decided to do this, but just before we decided to air this, because we recorded a few pilots for quality, and if we had just launched the first episode then, we would own it. But then we had to go through a long, arduous process of finding a new name because every variation of raising spirits was taken for a long time, which brings us to raising those spirits.
Which is still a good name, and we're happy to be bringing you the Raising Those Spirits podcast.
But,
But through yeah, but throughout this first episode, you're gonna hear us refer to the show under its original name.
just bear with us. It'll just be the first episode. This is the Raising Those Spirits podcast, but we will not be calling that throughout this upcoming episode. And sorry for any confusion. Uh, I'm sure we were at least just as confused as you will be.
I think perhaps even more so. It's been a confusing day. With that, if you want to find us on social media, we are under our new name, our brand new name, even though this is the first episode, which is RT Spirits Pod. That's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
And YouTube.
Oh, and YouTube. Also on the YouTube. You can listen to us on YouTube.
So, we hope you stick with us, and let's raise those spirits.
Raise those spirits. Hello, audience.
Hello, welcome to Raising Spirits. I'm Steve.
I'm Sam,
Oh,
and this is our podcast that we talk about how to keep the spooky spirit alive all year round. We don't think that the spooky spirit is something that you just need around Halloween.
yeah,
And we're both dads, and we're trying to keep the spooky spirit alive with our kids as much as possible because because it's fun. Because it's just fun.
yeah, we're going to be talking about spooky cartoons, activities, video games, after school specials, family activities for the year around, just to keep the spooky lifestyle going. Because, you know,
Spooky books, spooky gardening. Probably a lot of spooky gardening because of the time of year that we're
yeah, I mean,
kicking this
coming
off.
up, spooky gardening. Uh,
Oh
if
my
we want to
goodness.
tease that down.
Oh yeah, tease it, Steve.
Perfect. Well, who are we, Sam? Why do we get to talk about spooky stuff?
We get to talk about spooky. So I think because we're spooky enthusiasts, because we're people who've been living the spooky lifestyle for a long time now. We're both, I guess, adult men in our 30s who maybe never totally grew up. Because what's the fun in that?
I think that's
Yeah, I
fair.
don't know. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I'm a former goth, and I grew up. I'm in my mid 30s. I'm not a goth anymore, but I still like that spooky aesthetic. I still like the spooky activities.
I was a ska kid, not very spooky.
I mean,
More weird. I don't know. I guess it was pretty normal. You know what? Actually, although I was pretty after the main ska time, I was not there in the 90s because I was too young. I'm a post Tony Hawk's Pro Skater ska type kid.
you had blue hair, so
I did have blue hair.
you get in. That's it. That's your ticket in right there. You had blue hair. That is the formal invitation.
Hmm.
All right, who
I
are we
was.
now?
Who are we now? Now I'm bald. I do not have hair. I
We are
do
now
if I let
just
it grow.
we're suburban dads now.
Suburban dads, I got a bad back. My teeth are probably going. I cracked a tooth over the weekend, Steve.
Oh, you hate to hear it.
So one of the things about raising spirits is, aside from spirits can refer to multiple things, and we always like to kick our shows off with a little cocktail. Steve, what are you drinking tonight? What spirit are you raising?
So, in the spirit of the week, every week we're going to have a drink that ties into the episode theme. And if you didn't read the description of the episode or the title, spoiler alert, we are doing Mother's Day this
Two
week.
dads kicking it off with Mother's Day for our first episode.
So for Mother's Day, what do people tend to do? They go out to brunch a lot. And with COVID and everything, you can't really do that right now. So I am going to be covering the Bloody Mary this week. It is both a drink with a spooky name and is also a drink that you would normally get at brunch. So we're going to go over how to make your own Bloody Mary.
I also went with a brunch type drink. I went with a vodka lemonade. It is served in a glass that I got from your wedding because it's one of my go-to. This is such a good glass. It is a go-to glass and has been ever since you got married.
Oh, thank you. If
So
you ever
I
want more, we have like 4 cases of them in the basement because no one took them home. So
so
keep that in mind.
the mom I'm raising a glass to this week, as opposed to my own mother or perhaps my wife, is your wife who is on my is on my drinking glass today.
Phenomenal. She will be thrilled to know. This no, this won't be her first Mother's Day. Wow, time flies.
Oh, it does.
Okay, so to make a Bloody Mary, there is like a base recipe, but people go insane with Bloody Mary. So we're gonna do a simple Bloody Mary.
I
Let's
like simple.
right, like keep it simple, and then take a sip and go crazy after that. See what direction you want to go. It's an ounce and a half of vodka. Now I'm gonna give you the cheat for the next one. 3/4 of a cup of spicy tomato juice cocktail, like a V8 cocktail or something. If you really want to get into it, you can use real tomato juice and horseradish to give it that
Hmm.
kick. But if you're just looking to throw something together, V8 juice cocktail will work fine. 2 dashes of Worcestershire sauce, Worcestershire. Don't at me on that one. Just you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Uh,
we know what you mean.
a da-
Nobody knows how to say it.
yeah, a dash of hot sauce, salt and pepper to taste, and then you want to salt the rim. At that point, I think the only thing you need to do is you stir it together with a celery stalk, but you can go crazy. You can put green olives, stuffed green olives. I've seen people putting bacon in there, lime wedges, parsley, paprika, an entire slider, one of those little
That's
burgers.
ridiculous.
Yeah, people really
And
go to town with these.
well, for a vodka lemonade, what you want to take is 2 ounces of vodka, 6 ounces of lemonade, ice cubes, lemon slices for garnish, and fresh mint. Put that
Mm,
together and make yourself a vodka lemonade. I will tell you, Steve, mine is not nearly that fancy. I used about a shot's worth of vodka, 3 ice cubes, and a pitcher of Crystal Light that was already in my fridge. It's delicious and quite refreshing.
I mean,
Also, I like totally ate a waffle that I had previously made for dinner. So it's very brunch, even though we're recording this at about 8:30 at night.
hey, it works with the theme. I also almost had chicken and waffles for dinner because I got my COVID shot. And then I don't know what about it, all the mixed emotions and everything. I just wanted like some southern comfort food. And I was like right by a Cracker Barrel. And I was just like, I promised my wife we'd get sushi because I'm getting the shot right by this really good sushi place and we haven't been there in a while. But God help me, I really want some like good fried chicken right now.
The last time I was at a Cracker Barrel, it was not long after my wife and I got married. For our honeymoon, we ended up just taking a road trip. We went down to where were we? Were It was either Virginia or West Virginia. I think we were in West Virginia for a wedding, our friend's wedding, and then we took a real slow ride back up the coast to New England. And the very last stop we made before heading home was Cracker Barrel because I had been bugging my wife For a very long time at that point, I was like, "We need to go to Cracker Barrel," and she would say, "Why do you want to go to Cracker
You
Barrel?"
were
It's
in
like
the actual South
the actual South.
and
No, we
wanted
were
to
in the literal
like
South.
and we're pushing for a Cracker Barrel. I was like, I mean, in a pinch, it's decent Southern food. Like if you don't have a good soul food place by you, which we don't anymore now that I'm fully in New England. But you were in the South, and we're like, we should go to the Cracker
And
Barrel. No,
and
that's
when I
good.
was in the South, we ate well, but when we got
I'm
back,
not
I
gonna
wanted
judge
to
you.
eat junk. I wanted junk.
It
And we
is.
went,
It's soothing junk.
yeah, and it was like, this is perfectly terrible. Like, they still have all those games on the tables. So like it's not good. I mean, it's Cracker Barrel. Like it's it's a step up from Applebee's, certainly. I'm not gonna say it's a big step up. It's not two steps up from Applebee's. And it really, really hit the spot again after a week in the literal actual South. Coming back and having some Cracker Barrel. I don't think we've been back since. So that had to have been that was probably like I don't know how long I've been married. Probably like 6 or 7 years ago. Well, I should
Nice.
figure out how long I've been married. Oh well.
I mean, time
Happy
stopped having
Mother's
any
Day.
meaning in 2020, so we all get a
Yeah,
pass.
that's true. We all
Uh,
get a pass. Nobody knows.
so that was 6 or 7 years ago. What have you been doing recently, and has it been spooky?
So the spookiest thing that I've done recently. We had the first really nice weekend last weekend. The flowers were in bloom. The sun was out. It was legitimately hot. We took the family for a walk through a cemetery, which is one of our very favorite family activities. Since my daughter has spent basically a third of her life in quarantine, during the COVID times, she has not spent a lot of time in the past year getting out, seeing people, really like going out and doing stuff. But no, we're finally like feeling comfortable venturing out. We're all starting to get our shots. So we took a long walk through a big local cemetery, Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was designed to be to be park like. So it's not just rows of headstones. It's this beautiful rambling graveyard with statues and structures and hills to climb, and there's flowers, and there's a lot of families out. It's not just us, but it's a beautiful place where you can go on a very spooky walk, without it being too spooky, because to my daughter it was just looking at wildflowers and looking at trees and just running in the grass. It was a wonderful time.
That's great. I saw your Facebook pictures. It looked really nice, and she was adorable as
Oh,
usual.
thank
But
you. Thank
it
you.
it is. It's nice to get out. We have a few really nice big cemeteries that are kind of similar near us that I've been hoping to take my son on the nicer weekends. It just didn't happen this weekend. We were doing garden stuff on our side because it's planting season.
Mm,
And it's planting for Halloween season, actually. Now's the time, at least in my
it
planning
is.
zone. Um,
It's April/May. It seems like a good time to get your Halloween garden going.
yeah, this is when you get all the winter squashes, all the pumpkins, all that stuff that you're gonna want to, if you want to grow yourself for Halloween, you get it in the ground now. So I cleared a lot of land, started sprouting seeds, getting things in the ground, kind of prepping for the spookiness that will hopefully come. Kind of keep that crop going all summer, and every time I go out and water them and check on them, I get a little bit of that Halloween excitement as I check their progress and know what they're going to become.
You able to get your son in on any of that gardening? He's one.
He's
Probably not.
he wants to help. We call him the kaiju because he just ends up storming through everything. Like he has his own little rake as I'm raking out the gardens. He'll like drag some leaves around and like push dirt with me and stuff. So he's not very helpful, but he wants to be. He's very interested in helping. And that's good cuz it's kids love to feel involved, and it's a good way to kind of rope him into like a hey, we're going to grow this, and then for come Halloween, I'll be able to be like this is why we were doing this, and we can paint them and carve them and do all that stuff.
That's nice.
And it is. It's really nice. It's a fun activity for me to do with my kid, teach him some responsibility, but also have like as he'll get older, he'll understand what we're doing, and I think he'll get in on the excitement as like, look how big the pumpkins are getting, look how, look at all the little squashes and stuff that are finally coming out. So that's good. That's really good. And you don't just have to, if you're not into doing your own pumpkins or if you're not in a climate that can do it, you can do flowers. There are a lot of spooky flowers out there that you can put in. I mean, don't go crazy. Nightshade is beautiful and it's on
But
brand.
poisonous.
Yeah, it is especially with children not advisable. It is so poisonous. If you're going for like that black flower Adams Family look, Black Magic Hollyhock is beautiful black flowers and it attracts butterflies and stuff. It's good for your yard. There is an orchid called a bat orchid that looks kind of like a bat in flight and is pitch black. If you don't have a yard, you just have an apartment or something, you're like, I can't plant stuff. There's things like bat orchids that you can put in your apartment and add a nice little spooky aesthetic. Just have some plant life in there at the same time. But
That's
you
what I'm gonna do. We're gonna get a bad orchid and put it in the middle of my living room. Like, this
exactly.
is my garden now.
Even if there's even if there's other things there, just put it right in the middle of the room. It is now a centerpiece.
Yeah, no, I mean we don't have a coffee table anymore, so I'll just fill up the middle of my room with bad orchids.
Yeah. And if you get some like planters outside the windows, there are almost every flower has a black variant. So you could put like there are black poppies, there are black sunflowers. Look around and have some fun with some plants that maybe your neighbors haven't seen. Maybe people haven't seen them anymore and kind of have a fun way to put it out there that you're into the spookiness and when you look out and
I'm gonna
plant
try. Mhm.
I was gonna say when you get to water your black flowers every night.
I'm gonna see if I can get an all black bouquet for my wife for Mother's Day.
That would be cool. I thought that some of these might be really hard. You're gonna have to like search online, but I actually went to Home Depot to buy some seedlings and stuff, and I found a whole bunch of black flowers that they were selling. I think I sent you some pictures, and I was like, "Oh,
Dead.
this is awesome! This is just here. You don't even have to special order. They have them at your local Home Depot." Did you celebrate Pastel Halloween this year?
No, I did not. We were not able to get anything together for Pastel Halloween. I
Same.
did look up a lot of crafts that I want to do for next year, but I think I learned about it a little bit too late to really like dive into it.
Same. I learned about Pastel Halloween this year and loved the concept, but did not. By time I found out about it, I didn't have time to prep. And by time our listeners find out about it, I feel like this is coming out just after Pastel Halloween.
Mm.
So they sadly won't get to.
They won't know
They
about it.
they
But
will
what
also
is
be
it?
learning about it.
Describe.
Yeah, this year you are also. We're all in the same boat. You're also learning
I'll
about it,
learn about it.
and we can
So
plan
we
for
have time to
next
prep
year.
for next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Pastel Halloween because I don't think our listeners know about it.
Yeah, I think it's relatively new. Okay, it's kind of like Christmas in July, but for Halloween, wherein it's 6 months out. It's kind of a pastel goth Halloween, if you know what pastel goths are. I know not everyone's a big fan of them. It's a good way to co opt the aesthetic into the very pastel spring palette. Take advantage of all the spring and Easter colors. And there's a lot of really fun, really cool things to do. Just crafts and activities and just kind of multicolored spooky ghosts. I mean, what did you find in your
So
searches that you
So I
liked?
found a lot of, it's like, you take the Halloween type items, your jack-o'-lanterns, your ghosts, your eyeball wreaths, if you're into making your own eyeball wreaths, which is something I'm going to try and do next year. Basically, you're using those items, but you're putting them into Easter colors. It creates a really interesting designs. I was looking a lot on Etsy to see like what are the pastel goth sort of items because I was like, oh, maybe I'll buy my daughter some fun little pastel goth things if they all ended up being kind of expensive. And I was like, maybe next time. I saw a lot of like demon horns, but they were pink and yellow and teal. Like what was it? It was like a spooky face wreath. Wreaths are apparently not just for Christmas anymore. We can make any sort of door decoration, but like using, spooky looking faces, but they're bright pastel colors. So yeah, think of it, I think of it as being like sort of your Wednesday Adams type vibe, but using Easter colors.
And
Kind
you
of gets you to
can
pastel goth.
you can work with that color palette. Like I saw someone great who did like a witch cake, and they used all the pastel green was the color of the skin, kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West. So like the cake was that pastel green, and then they did like a black witch's hat on top with like
Mhm.
the like pastel purple for the hair and stuff, and it came out looking really cool.
Oh man.
And it was very on brand, and it really leaned into the season. I saw a lot of people getting like their nails and makeup done where you have the spooky nails with the spider webs and the ghosts and stuff, but like with that light pink background or that light blue background, so it's kind of an off-white as opposed to like the orangish, and it works. I think, do your own research. Check out Pinterest, check out Etsy. There's a lot of cute ideas out there, and it's just a way to
Mhm.
keep it fun, Christmas in July style, if that's your thing.
It's Halloween in April. But hey, we're going to do Halloween in April and May and June, July, August, all the way back through to October.
But now it has a name.
Now it has a name, Pastel Goth. A lot of fun.
Do we want to get
So,
to the meat of the episode? Do we want to get into Mother's
oh
Day?
yeah, let's
Or I mean,
let's
if
get
you
into
have
Mother's
if you have
Day.
something else that you've been doing, I'd love to hear about it, but
No, that was our big spooky activity this week. This past week was going on that lovely walk. But I will tell you about a book I read because you recommended it to me.
yes, I would love to hear what you thought of it and what your child thought of it. Because growing up for me, it was one of my favorites.
So, at Steve's recommendation this week, I checked out the book Harry and the Terrible What's It, which is by I'm going to see if I can pronounce his name. His name is Dick Gackenbach. Gackenbach? You know how to say his name?
No.
No. Well, Dick Gackenbach, who wrote this book, came out in the mid 1970s. He is still alive. He is 94 years old, so
Oh, good
good
for
for Dick.
him. I've got a bunch of his
Yeah.
books.
Yeah, no, I see that he put out a whole bunch of stuff in the 1970s. I was not familiar with this book. And I will tell you what, I could not get my daughter to sit down and read this book with me because she thought it was too scary. Um,
Really?
I could not get my daughter to read this book with me. Every time I brought it up, she asked me like, "What is the name of the book?" I would say, "Oh, this is Harry and the Terrible What's It?" And she would go, "I don't want to read that book. That sounds too scary." Which is so funny because she's not usually shy about these kinds of things. But I read it on my own and I enjoyed it. So my first recommendation is it might be a little bit too scary for a 3-year old. We might be aiming more at the 5 or 6-year-old range, and that's okay. The book is about Harry, whose mother, because we're talking about Mother's Day, his mother goes down to the basement to get some pickles, and Harry is worried about his mother. So he goes in after her, and what does he find but the terrible what's it? It was a big two-headed monster. Now, one of the reasons I was really hoping I could convince her to sit down and go through this book with me is because whenever I go into the basement of my house, when it's just me and her, like our laundry is in the basement, she always stands at the top of the stairs and like will yell down to me, "Daddy, watch out for spiders. Let me know if you see any spiders. If you find a spider, let the spider out outside." She does this pretty much every time. So I thought this book would actually be right up her alley. But again, she's 3. She can be a little skittish. 90% of the time she likes spooky stuff, but every now and then she'll kind of push back on it. And again, that's okay. I can't make her love the things I love. But I enjoyed the book. It's a quick read. I was able to find it. We were able to find it on Internet Archive. So if you go to Internet Archive, you can find a copy of it there, so you don't need to go out and buy a copy of it. Well, Steve, you grew up with this book. What are your happy memories about this spooky book?
Well, we had a big basement, which should have probably qualified as a spooky basement, but I don't know. I always had this book, and it's about overcoming your fear of the basement. So I was never scared of my basement, which something like even as a young kid I always took pride in because you watched any 90s TV show, every kid was scared of their creepy basement.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, I get it. Basements are dark, they smell, they're damp. They're scary places. It's the sort of place you're gonna meet the what's it because
Yeah,
you
you
don't know what's
hear
down there.
weird noises, the floor above you creaks, there's a boiler or a furnace or plumbing pipes, there's lots of weird smells. It's a sensory thing, I think, to a large degree.
Yeah.
The weird odors, the weird sounds, the weird smells. I guess the smells are odors.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, so Harry overcomes his fear because he wants to go find his mom and he goes down and he faces this what's it so that he doesn't have to be afraid of the basement anymore. Yeah, so it's about him overcoming that fear. Again, it's a quick read. It's I don't know the page count. It's not very many pages.
It is not very many pages at all.
No, it's a 10-minute read, but I definitely appreciate it. I think it's cool. It's got that cool 1970s sort of storybook art. You'd know what I mean when you see it, what that old sort of 1970s art is.
I've always loved the art from this book in particular. I think that's another thing that I loved about it. I always just really stylistically liked it, which is funny because I didn't stylistically love that time period, but for whatever reason, it just worked with the spooky aesthetic of the book. And I think that's one of the reasons I didn't like it because I've always felt like the 70s books always just looked a lot gloomier than they needed to be, like unnecessarily gloomy. But for this topic, it works.
For that, yeah, for this it's good. You know what? I feel like all animation and illustration in the 1970s looked like Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah,
Yes.
I'd say it definitely has a sort of Schoolhouse Rock style animation. I don't know why I think all 1970s animation looks like that, but
It was a
this
generic.
has that vibe.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I think it's something worth checking out if you have a kid that's afraid of the basement. Again, maybe a little older than my daughter, who is 3, just about 4. It was a little too scary for her. Again, I would call it mildly scary.
A good
But
introduction to spooky once they get comfortable with the concept.
and it's funny because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that she's into that is inherently spookier than this, and she'll usually get over it this time. I just, you don't know what a 3-year-old's gonna do. I'll talk more about those things in the future because there's a ton of spooky stuff that she is into,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is kind of the whole basis of this show. But yeah, I was looking up Dick Gockenbach. Oh boy, I wish I knew how to say his name. Dick Gockenbach. Some of his other books, and I think this is the only time as far as I can tell, he kind of goes for a monster aesthetic.
Yeah, I did a similar thing where I researched him a couple months ago when I was pulling out books for my son and, kind of prepping for when he gets a little older and all these can be read to him. And I was like, I wonder what else. And it turns out I had a few of this guy's books, but as you said, like he does. This was an offshoot for him. He didn't tend to do like spooky, scary books or books about monsters. Like that wasn't his thing. He just was. He tackled a subject matter and he moved on.
But I mean, like this monster, I'm going to describe it to anybody who's not familiar with the what's it. The monster is, he's probably about twice the size of Harry. So you have to think this monster is about the size of a full-grown adult. It has 2 heads. It has, kind of both heads have kind of these troll-like features. They both seem to have horns, although one of them seems to like he might be like kind of plant-like. There seems to be a vine sort of tail. There's vines growing on the horns. They have a skull necklace. They're dressed in like this big burlap sack. It has hair coming out of its ears. It's got hairy legs. It's got long toenails. It has way too many toes. I don't remember how many toes it has. I think it has 12 toes. So this is a pretty scary monster. Kind of reminiscent of where the wild things are, but not friendly.
I think it was based off of an Etten, and I
An
think
Etten?
an Etten. An Etten is a two-headed troll.
Okay.
If you've ever
I
seen
spell Etten.
Ettin.
I'm googling it now. Oh, okay. Here's a bunch of stuff from D&D. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
like
would
it
definitely
was. It
say.
was a more children's story version of an Etten.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely say that the what's it He's an Etten. If anybody's familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, which Steve and I can both claim we are quite familiar with, no,
Absolutely.
shocking to everybody. If you Google Etten, oh, I mean, you can always Google what's it,
Yeah, you could always just
which
Google
is
Harry and the
you
Terrible
can
What's
always
It.
just Google Harry the Devil what's it. But if you want to know
The
it's
base
the
folklore.
evolution.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really creepy. Now I want to know more about Ettins. So now I'm clicking onto Wikipedia.
All right, well, while
Oh,
you
it's
go
just a
down that
list.
rabbit
There's not a
hole,
lot of info.
I feel like they originate in like a Norse tech thing. I think they were originally a type of troll. My wife could answer that. She's Norwegian and is obsessed with the trolls, which I am sure we will talk about in a future episode because we have so many books about them for children so they can
Hmm.
learn all of the lore and who to be nice to and who to not be nice to and which are the monsters and which are the helpers. The Norse troll pantheon is truly impressive. But
Okay, so according to Wikipedia, an Etten is also known as a bogle, Bogle, or would that be a bogle?
a bogle.
Bogle, and it's of Northumbrian.
Well, Northumbrian is Scottish and
It's like
English, yeah.
Scotland. Yeah. So there, I'm learning all sorts of things, and that's again,
And
that's
that
why
could
we
be
do
why
this.
I'm familiar with Ettins, because I'm Scottish. So,
I'm Jewish. Not a lot of spooky books about golems.
you got an X Files
You-
episode.
We did. No, I mean every TV show does a golem at one point because there's just the one Jewish monster. So he pops up. He pops up in pretty much every supernatural television series at some point. But how about you, Steve? What did you check out this week for
So,
Mother's Day?
for Mother's Day, I watched Coraline, which I had never seen before, and I figured it was a good excuse to finally sit down and watch it.
So, what did you think of Coraline?
First and foremost, I'm going to say it is rated PG, and I would recommend that you stick with that recommendation. It is firmly in the 8 to 12-year-old range. Maybe test the waters with some other PG spookiness first. There
You
are
cannot go straight into Coraline. You cannot.
Do not start with Coraline. There are a lot of similar movies, both aesthetically and conceptually, that are also in that range. That may be a softer touch to, start with. Launch them in with Paranorman or A Nightmare Before Christmas, Frankenweenie, James and the Giant Peach. They all have that like spooky aesthetic and the spooky art style without dropping you directly into Coraline.
Yeah, I feel like
Because,
James and the Giant Peach, you're right, is probably a good litmus test
yeah,
for how they're going to do with a lot of those things. But definitely, if you're just getting your kid into spooky,
do
don't go
not start
straight
with Coraline.
Coraline.
Because Coraline is going to take you by surprise. Because it's really quaint, and it is a slow burn for like the first hour, and then it just kind of rapidly escalates. And I'll leave it at that. But it goes from, oh, this is quaint and quirky and cute and like, it's a spooky concept, and then, oh my god. So I did enjoy it. I'm not a huge Neil Gaiman fan. I'm not against Neil Gaiman in any way. I just know some people are like really into his stuff, and that's great. There does seem to be there's a huge overlap with the spooky crowd and the Neil Gaiman crowd, despite a lot of his stuff not necessarily being spooky.
Oh
But
no, you don't think so? I don't know what of Neil Gaiman's I wouldn't think of
I
as
mean,
being spooky.
I wouldn't say it is first and foremost spooky. How about that? Like, things like
Okay.
Starlight and Neverwhere. Like, there are
Oh,
things that,
Neverwhere.
like, the things that I've seen from him are secondary spooky. Like, it's never his primary focus. It's always more of a fairy tale, but like a Grimm's fairy tale. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
I understand the overlap. I've just never sought out Neil Gaiman. So I generally enjoy his work, but I never am like hunting it down, which is probably why this one got by me for so long. I will say it is very similar to The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. And I now have to go I have that in graphic novel form, and I have to go reread it after watching Coraline.
We're
Which,
telling me about that.
yeah, that's gonna be my side recommendation. If your kid watches Coraline and they like it, try finding the graphic novel for The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. It was written about 9 years before Coraline by one of just the masters of horror, and it is written for children, but it is also intended to be enjoyed by adults. Like it's supposed to be something that you can introduce your kids to spooky and horror and stuff with you and have everyone enjoy it. I really liked The Thief of Always, which is one of the reasons I never sought out Coraline because I discovered it around the
Hmm.
time that Coraline came out, and then people told me about the plot of Coraline, and I was like, I just read that book, and it wasn't called Coraline. This seems like a crappy ripoff. Because at that point, I didn't really know who Neil Gaiman was yet.
Hmm.
Back in like 2000. So that's my little side thing. If your kid likes Coraline or is into the concept of Coraline, but Coraline doesn't really stick, try The Thief of Always. But otherwise, Coraline was really well done. I'm not a huge guy into the claymation stuff, but I do end up liking a lot of them. It's just like again, people get really into that niche spooky market, and I am neither for nor against it. But it really
You're
worked.
neutral. You're neutral on claymation.
I am. I really like
This
stop
is a
motion.
concept.
When I was in film school, I did a bunch of stop motion stuff, and I really enjoyed it, and I really respect it. But I feel like a lot of the spooky crowd, like I think it might be Tim Burton's fault, but they are like end all be all the spooky claymation.
Sure, I
Um,
suppose after Nightmare Before Christmas kind of becomes your spooky claymation sort of template. It's like, oh, this is what spooky animation is supposed to be like with those sort of thin figures, big heads, big eyes.
exactly, and
Um
and then they did right after that they did Corpse Bride. And then you had like Frankenweenie and Paranorman all kind of leaned into that genre aesthetic with the big heads and stuff like that. And it became its own subgenre.
and I wouldn't think of Nightmare Before Christmas as being like a kid movie either. But I guess just by virtue of being animation, it kind of falls into.
It was heavily marketed towards kids
Was it?
when we were kids it came out.
When did it come out? Was it like mid
And
90s?
that was like mid 90s, yeah.
I feel like I didn't care about it when it first came out. I got more into Nightmare Before Christmas probably when I was in college and into more, well, I guess when I was probably getting more into like strictly kind of spooky, weird aesthetic.
Huh.
It's probably when I got into it because I think I saw it. They did a 3D re release of it. I want to say when I was in college that I went to go see.
So it was released on October 29th, 1993.
Oh man, so we were little. We would have been like 9 years
Yeah.
old,
And
8 years old.
I remember I did not like The Nightmare Before Christmas when it came out. It was the beginning of like a weird feeling of alienation I had with the spooky crowd for a long time because I am one of like the few people who just Tim Burton doesn't do it for me. I know we just lost viewers from that comment, but I just can't not say it. It's just so controversial. But Tim Burton was never like I liked Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice, but and of course the original Batman. But like I don't know, like I didn't really get into his animated stuff very big, and my wife loves Nightmare Before Christmas, and I suffer through it every year for her. But
Oh no. Wow.
yeah,
Oh my god, I'm learning things about you, Steve.
I know. And so Coraline was a nice, refreshing. I thought it was going to kind of be in that aesthetic, but I did end up really enjoying it.
Hmm.
The
No, I
animation.
think when Nate, yeah, Neil Gaiman spooky stuff for kids. Some of his spooky stuff for kids is really fantastic. Like, the Graveyard Book. I look forward to when my daughter is old enough to enjoy the Graveyard Book because I think that'll be a fun read together. Yeah, Neil Gaiman. He also did what was it? Norse mythology. Was that a kids book? That might not have been a kids book. I'm gonna just Google Neil Gaiman kids.
Neil Gaiman is an author who I don't like the person, but I keep ending up liking the things that he does. Or like he's very quotable, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's a really cool story. Who wrote that?" Like it's like a real story, not like a book story, like an experience. And then it's
Mhm.
like quote by Neil Gaiman, and I'm like, "Damn it, he got me again."
I mean, he's done a ton. He's a very talented writer. Nobody's gonna come out and say that he's not. We have a couple of storybooks on our shelves of his Pirate Stew. I got that one for from my parents for my daughter for Christmas, and that's about two kids whose parents go out for the evening, and their babysitter turns out to be a pirate, and they make a pirate stew. I also have Tuesday at the Beach. That's on my daughter's bookshelf, which is about a panda who goes to the beach and sneezes. Nothing really spooky there. It's just kind of cute. But he has a number of children's book. So if you're into Coraline, but maybe want something that's going to be a little bit easier to digest for a little kid, Gaiman really does have children's stories for kids of all ages.
I
And I think
forgot
one of the
he
good things.
did Mirror Mask, which was very good.
I've never seen Mirror Mask.
Ooh, we should. I should almost make you do Mirror Mask for an episode in the future. You can watch the movie. You
Okay.
don't have to read the book. They made it with,
Because
I
that was his
believe,
attempt at a labyrinth, wasn't it? Like they were trying to do a labyrinth.
I believe they made it with the Jim Henson Company. I could be wrong. If not, they definitely wanted to remake Labyrinth, and it was like an Eastern European labyrinth. Is the best way I can describe
Oh
it.
yeah, it's Jim Henson Company. I just looked it up. Yeah,
Perfect.
I read all about it once because I wrote about it for a blog post. It was one of those movies that really didn't hit.
Yes. I got really excited about it. I think it came out our senior year of film school. I was just like, I have to see this movie. And I remember my wife and I got it like the day it came out, even though I had no money, and we watched it. And it was good. Like it's got a really solid soundtrack. I've been meaning to rewatch it because I want to know if it holds up. Because that was like 15 years ago.
You know what movie I watched when I was looking for like a new labyrinth? I watched Pan's Labyrinth. Have you seen Pan's Labyrinth?
Yeah, we watched that in theater. I think that came out the same year. That was like a
It was
really
'06.
spooky year. This was '05.
Mirror Mask was '05. Pan's Labyrinth was '06.
Yeah, so we watched that in theaters and we went in for a much spookier. I think we went in for a much more horror as opposed to spooky, and my wife ended up crying
It's the
uncontrollably
saddest
for a
movie.
long time and still hasn't forgiven me because I thought we were going to see like a scary movie, not an emotionally devastating movie.
Emotionally devastating. Yeah, if you're looking for like a spooky, fun kids mystery type, like or a spooky horror movie, the kid protagonist, and you're thinking it's going to be something like kind of on the lighter side, Pan's Labyrinth is not. It was one of those movies. It was a period of time when I was still getting like Netflix DVDs. My wife and I would, before we were married, we'd sit down, we'd pop a DVD in, and she would fall asleep on the couch, and I would end up just like watching a movie by myself. And now I'm like watching Pan's Labyrinth by myself and just being sad. It's just, and it's rated R. Like it's not a children's movie. You think it's going to be because it has this little girl going on an adventure through mysterious land. Yeah. Getting a little away from the topic of Coraline, but if you're going to sit down and watch Pan's Labyrinth, be prepared to be incredibly sad. Coraline, much more fun.
Yeah,
Very
Coraline,
spooky, but
very
much more
fun,
fun.
but it does not warn you before it gets spooky, really. You go, it's full of eccentric, quaint characters and, whimsical, like adventures, and then it's good until it's not good. And, she ends up angering the villain, and suddenly things get very creepy. And
This is funny. I just typed Coraline into Google. First thing that pops up is the website for the movie, and then it goes. People ask, why is Coraline so creepy?
that's the thing. It's not super scary, but I think it's gonna creep the kids out. Definitely wait for that PG recommendation for them to be at least 8 and see how they deal with creepy stuff. Cause
It's unnerving. It's an unnerving movie, is what I would say about Coraline. It's visually it's beautiful. Like
it
I think
is
the animation is
gorgeous.
gorgeous. I think the art is gorgeous, and I think the acting is fantastic. It is just it's designed to make you feel unnerved, and it is very successful in that. Yeah, a lot of that I think comes from the character design. They start out as sort of like what you expect for like a fun cartoon animated clay animation, not clay animation, no, they don't use clay, stop motion animation. But then they get so twisted, over the course of the movie. And we're not going to get into spoilers, but the animation gets so twisted, it gets again unnerving.
Some of it is like she's outright being attacked, and that is scary. But some of the characters just kind of start to deteriorate, and that in itself is like it has this sense of unnervingness. But it does have an amazing cast. It has Dakota Fanning, Terry Hatcher, Keith David, John Hodgman. They all do an amazing job. It's well acted, it's well put together, it's beautiful to look at. You'll never see it coming.
No.
And you warned
So it
me,
gets you. It gets you. No, I did. I
and
did.
I kept
I
waiting
mean, I
for
really
it.
like that movie.
And I was like, Sam, I know. Like Sam told me this wasn't for kids, and I was just like, okay, okay, and I just hung out. And then, like literally, like an hour, 5 minutes in, roughly, I was like, whoa, okay, here we are. This is
Oh, I
what,
mean, it sneaks up on you.
yeah. So, highly recommend it. Just not first. I'm
Watch
gonna
it.
say that's my final word.
I would say before you show it to your kids, no matter what age your kids are, unless they're like teenagers or
If they're
something.
in college, you gotta watch it. Send them to bed early. Pour yourself a
Not to
glass of
bed
wine.
early. You watch it. But yeah, definitely, I would say it's a watch beforehand. Know when you're going to need to fast forward through the scary parts because it's that is something I've learned. You can never really trust something that you're not going to have to fast forward through it. Oh, can I? Let me tell you what movie taught me that lesson. And I think you'll find this surprising. Little Mermaid 3. Uh,
You're
my
right. I
daughter
do
loves
find that
Little Mermaid.
surprising.
Yeah, I my daughter loves Little Mermaid, which we have Disney Plus, so that resulted in us watching Little Mermaid 2, which was one of this direct to VHS sequel. It's much lower in quality, but she prefers Little Mermaid 2. And then she wanted to watch Little Mermaid 3, which is a prequel, and it shows how the Little Mermaid's mom dies.
Oh
Like
no.
unambiguously, like it is in the first few minutes of the movie. They just like show how she dies. They don't like show blood or guts or anything, but it's just like she is unambiguously like run down by a boat. And I was like, oh no, I shouldn't have let you watch this because now I need to explain to my daughter what death is.
Yeah.
um yeah, that was a mistake. Watch movies, watch these movies before you show them to your kid because you never know when Ariel is going to end up teaching your child about their parents' inevitable demise.
Going off on a tangent again about watching things before you show them for your kids, especially on Disney Plus. Have you seen Kit Bull?
No, I've not even heard of it.
Oh my God. So my son was like freaking out because, we have our home office. We both work from home, and it's a big room. He's got a lot to do, but by the end of the day, he does not want to be in this room anymore. So, you put on some Pixar shorts or something, try and squeeze like an extra 10, 20 minutes out of him. And I saw this one. It was called Kit Bull, and it had a really cute kitten on it. And I was like,
Oh
cool,
no.
great. I'm gonna throw this on. We have cats. He worships the cats. And this is his new favorite thing, Sam. Like it is his new favorite thing, and it is so sad.
Oh
Like
no.
my wife walked up and I'm sitting on the couch crying as my son jumps up and down, giggling, running back and forth. And she's like, "What happened?" And she turns and looks. She's like, "Oh, I forgot to warn you about Kipple." And it is about a kitten who lives in a junkyard underneath a pile of barbed wire. And the junkyard owner brings home a pit bull that like she is terrified of, but they get this tiny little friendship going. But then the pit bull gets forced into dog fighting, and it's about that and the horrible life that this dog lives, and like gets like loses all of its fights and like is like bleeding out in the backyard, and the kitten's trying to take care of it. And it is just the saddest, saddest, saddest 9 minutes of your life. And it has a happy Pixar ending, but oh man, it gets real heavy real quick out of nowhere, especially since it has adorable animation. So my son loves it. He thinks the kitten and the puppy playing together is the most exciting thing in the world. Meanwhile, everyone who realizes what actually is happening is just like ugly crying. And watch things before your kids see them so you don't get them hooked and have to watch it multiple times.
I'm going to recommend to you Burrow. Burrow is another Pixar short. It's about a bunny who's digging a hole and about all the fun characters he meets in the hole.
That gets recommended to me a
There's
lot by Disney.
Yeah, no, Burrow, very good. Definitely doesn't have any dogfighting in it. Which, oh my god, that sounded so sad.
Yeah, and again, it's really well done. It's
Is
really
that
good.
on regular? Is that on like the little kid Disney Plus, or
I don't
is it
think
only on grown up
so.
Disney Plus?
We don't use little kid Disney Plus because he can't get in on his own yet. So we just kind of have
Oh,
normal Disney Plus because we're making the decisions anyway.
smart
So
move. My
yeah,
daughter is now at the age that she can work the remote herself, which is very annoying.
understandable. Yeah, I think you're safe if you do that. Otherwise, don't come across this Pixar short and be like, "That'll be good." It won't be good. That's my final advice.
It's
It's
good
not
advice.
it's not spooky, it's just sad.
All right, so this is the lesson that we've learned from Coraline, and I think from Harry and the What's It is you need to check this stuff out before you show it to your kid because you can mess your kid up if you're not paying attention to what they watch.
That is the weird lesson that I did not expect to come out of this week.
Right. Yeah. See, we're learning a lot of stuff about parenting styles, I think, by having these conversations, Steve.
And they're taking this journey with us. But I agree. It's really nice to be able to talk to you about this. We don't have a lot of friends who ended up having kids.
No, what's that about?
I do. I mean, the
And also at the same time,
recession.
I'm like, yeah, the recession and then COVID. And like whenever I have friends who are like going out and doing stuff, I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. Sure. I go do things. That's fine. I'm having a tea party.
Yes. Yes, I'm trying to build things with Mega Blocks quicker than he can tear them apart. I feel really bad because we go on walks around the neighborhood a lot, and there are
Mm.
a lot of children my son's age. And so like we go on like our nighttime sunset kind of spooky walks and there's just a million kids out playing in their yards and like you can see all these children who like have spent most of their lives not
Yeah,
allowed
in
to
quarantine.
talk to other children, but they all like see each other and they reach out and they're all like hi. Like you can just like you can feel the tension that they just want to like charge each other.
Yeah. My daughter's been, in case we use this, I'll keep referring to her as my daughter. My daughter's been, since she's been getting out, has been really trying to talk to people. Like, she tried to get attention from anybody. She'll say hello to passing cars.
Mhm.
Now, my wife has had to teach her, like, is now trying to teach her, like, you can't just be friendly with everybody. There's still stranger danger.
Yeah.
She's just wants to talk to everybody.
Yep.
When we go to parks now, like she asks every other kid if she wants to be her friend. It's so
Yeah,
cute.
we just took him to the park to like walk around the other day, and he saw all these little kids just running around playing together because they were all part of like a family.
Mhm.
And he was just like, he didn't understand why he couldn't join all the other kids are allowed to be together. And it's like, kid, they're all one bubble. That's like five siblings. I'm sorry. You like he doesn't understand, and I'm just like, you can't. We gotta
No.
go. We're never coming back to the park. It made me too sad.
No, it's hard. It's very hard. Oh, so I think the important thing that we all learned here is that definitely you're going to want to preview some stuff before you show it to your kid so that you don't end up having to teach lessons you did not intend to teach that day.
The lesson that we're learning is one thing, but like sometimes these things can teach really good lessons. It just might not be a lesson they're quite ready for yet. But at least you get to know if you want them to have it and you kind of put it on the shelf for a little while. Do you
Stay
want to
out of the basement.
I mean, honestly, that's the problem because like most of the time you don't want your kids in the basement. That
Oh, my
off
basement's gross.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like my basement, I don't want my son in at least for a while. I mean, last year we had snakes. Is that going to be every year? If it is, I don't want my son down there.
No, no, you definitely don't want your son down there playing with snakes.
So like maybe I don't teach him to not be afraid of the basement. Maybe I hold on to that and see if he see what kind of
Oh yeah, definitely don't show him. Don't
yeah,
show him Harry and the Terrible What's It because if he gets bold and stops being afraid of the basement, he could get attacked by snakes.
exactly. So use your best judgment. That's all I can say. As a parent, that's really all you can do. Just use your best judgment.
All right. Well, tell us on social media what's a good call to action, Steve? Tell us on social
Once
media what's in your basement.
what cautionary tale books do you read your children or what things did you show your children and it turned out oops too early?
like Ariel 3.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes it's the weirdest thing. I mean,
Well,
Patton
thank you,
Oswalt
everybody.
has a great
Mm.
sketch on that. If you want to, lighten the mood after this kind of ending depressing, just look up Patton Oswalt Wolfman. It's about how he accidentally let his daughter see the Wolfman movie, the remake, with Benicio del Toro, and as he was channel surfing, and he turned into it during the wolf transformation, and he was like, "Oh no, I've ruined my child forever." It's a good listen. It'll take you about 5 minutes.
I will check that out.
Do we want to
All right.
tease next week, or do we
What are
want
we
to let it
doing
be a
next time?
surprise?
I don't
Uh,
remember what we're doing.
Next week, well, not next week. It's a bi-weekly
2 weeks from
podcast.
now.
In 2 weeks, we're taking it out of the basement. We're going to the sky. We're covering aliens.
Oh yeah, we're doing alien stuff. That's right. I have a good book picked out.
I
One that my
also
daughter has let me read to her.
I also have a book picked out, so very book heavy.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks again for listening, and we will see you here again, or we will hear you here again
You'll hear us
in two
again.
weeks. You'll hear us here again in
If
two
we
weeks
hear
for
you, I feel
Raising
like it's
Spirits.
it's gone horribly wrong if we're hearing them. They found us.
All right. Good night, folks.
Good night.